we're doing a live show, and I wanted to have everybody on Instagram chime in and ask your questions.
So we've been working around the clock. We had our grand opening on Monday. We moved in residents the following day. They're loving it.
What is whole person change, and why is that so critical?
Yeah. When you look at Brian is a miracle story in and of itself. Brian should not be alive today when you look at his past. He's thriving. Brian is now a coach at the Other Side Village. And so he helps individuals coming right off the street go through the same thing he went through. Well, you have to be clean before you come in.
Oh, before you even come in.
Yeah.
The
So if you're
detox
not,
has to have already happened.
if for example, we've had situations where a person's scheduled to come in and we drug test you the minute you come in, you test positive, we will take you to detox if that's what you want. We can't force you there, but we say, look, in order to come back here, you've got to be sober. First, you got to meet the definition of being chronically homeless. We don't accept anyone with an arson history or sex offenders. When you talk to our folks in our community, they'll say, this is really my family. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have people who are aligned with my same beliefs and principles and where I want to go and the life I want to live. I don't want to be in an encampment anymore, worrying about where I'm going to get my next meal, or they're going to take all my stuff and I'm going to have to find a sleeping bag and tent and everything else again.
So on the program with me today is Preston Cochrane. He is the CEO of the Other Side Village. And just like last week, the Other Side Village opened up to a lot of fanfare and celebration because this has been 4 years in the works. Is that right?
Roughly. I mean, yeah, about 3.5-ish. Yeah, so round up.
Yeah, congratulations. That's been a long time in the works, and you finally have residents. How many residents are living there now?
Yeah, we've got 9 residents living there. It's been a long week, so if I look tired, it's because I am.
Yeah.
So we've been working around the clock. We had our grand opening on Monday. We moved in residents the following day, and they're loving it.
Yeah, I talked to 2 of them yesterday, and I want to show this quick video of Brian and Jennifer. And let me turn this up. Can you hear this okay, Ishal?
Maybe as you're loading that up, so as you look at the video, we've got 32 homes now on site. There's 60 that are going into phase 1. Here's Brian.
The best thing that I ever heard for me is I got myself there. I put myself in those predicaments. I stole from my mom. My traumas didn't make me steal from my mom. I chose to do those things. And once I was told kind of what the uncomfortable truth was, and I was at the time forced to be uncomfortable and want to crawl out of my own skin, that's the best medicine for anybody, and especially men and women that aren't used to it and that are used to telling people what they need to tell them to get what they want instead of telling people what they need to hear.
And so the Other Side Academy's model is they hold every person there totally accountable for the behavior problems, and they encourage what you call whole person change. Do you want to first start by explaining what is whole person change and why is that so critical?
Yeah. When you look at Brian is a miracle story in and of itself. Brian should not be alive today when you look at his past. He's thriving. Brian is now a coach at the Other Side Village. And so he helps individuals coming right off the street go through the same thing he went through. The same road he walked, the same path he walked. He's able to take them literally by the hand and walk beside them and help them and say, you know what, I've been down that road before. I know what you've gone through. Here's what it's going to take for you to unlearn those old ways. And that whole person change is 200% accountability. It's being authentic. It's being able to receive feedback. It's looking at your body, mind, and soul and spirit and being able to look at what are those reasons that have kept you on the street for so long. Peeling back that onion, peeling those layers, peeling that trauma and those things that have caused you to live the life that you have. And so when you look at someone like Brian, who's overcome major challenges. And you ask him today, are you a different person? He would say, I'm not even the same person. Someone who did hard drugs, lived on the street here in Salt Lake City, and now he's able to be on the other side of that and help lift people out of off the street. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is, because when you look at people shooting up on North Temple, that's where he was, you almost think, God, they're just too far gone. Like, how can anything or anyone get through to this person to make them want to change, short of death? I mean, I guess the sad part about what I see out there when I interview people is we have a lot of compassion in Utah and Salt Lake City. We want to give out those coats, those blankets, that food, the water, everything they need to survive. We want to get them out of the cold. Absolutely 100% justifiable and awesome. We do that. But then there's no hard enough landing to reach that rock bottom that makes them think, oh man, I got to get off these drugs. I got to stop doing this. And Dave has been on this program a couple times, and he just said you need that you need to hit that rock bottom where you realize there's nothing short of death that's going to stop me from using drugs unless I change my life. Mm-hmm. So that's why I asked that question of Brian, what is it that's going to make a person just like change their mind and decide this is it, I'm done? And so does everybody have a rock bottom story, or does some people
the people that contact us, that we interview and ultimately accept into the Other Side Village Prep School, which is a requirement before you move into the village. Okay, so you spend some time, a minimum of 6 months in the prep school, learning and getting feedback. And being
are a lot
able
of these
to
people detoxing before they can go to
you have to be clean before you come in.
Oh, before you even come in.
Yeah.
The
so if you're
detox
not,
has to have already happened.
If for example, we've had situations where a person's scheduled to come in and we drug test you the minute you come in, you test positive, we will take you to detox if that's what you want. We can't force you there, but we say, look, in order to come back here, you've got to be sober.
And you are absolutely running there. Thank you. A clean facility. You have zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance. It's random drug tests. We random drug test everyone yesterday. Yeah. And if things pop up, then there are consequences. And, there's plenty of treatment programs out there, some of which will be maybe slap you on the hand for this, that, or the other. We do take that kind of hard stance and accountability where we're creating this safe environment for everyone, and everyone expects that of each other. So if you're putting someone else at risk, you're putting the whole house at risk. So in order to maintain that safety and security, so everyone feels like they can have their door open in their apartment and not worry about it, those are the things that you need to do to make that happen.
Yeah. So and contrasting your model with the permanent supportive housing model that's, I guess, mandated through HUD, which makes it extremely difficult to kick people out, even if they are on drugs. Those facilities are, horrible in a nutshell. In terms of the people who I've talked to have told me about the rampant drug use happening inside of those facilities, I think you got to take that zero tolerance approach, because one bad apple, like you said, those people are all former drug addicts. If that supply shows up on site, what's going to stop them from using it again? Right.
It's, use an analogy like an Olympic village, right? You're drug testing everyone in the Olympics. How is that any different? If you want to live in that lifestyle, you want to live in that safe and sober community, you'd expect that of every one of your colleagues to maintain that same level of measure.
Yeah. So we got some questions already. This is Drew. He's asking, can you tell us about the practical things people have to do in order to get housing? What are the responsibility and standards they must maintain? We just talked about no drugs, but anything else?
If the question, Drew, is to get housing in the village, how do you qualify to get into the village? So there are some qualifications. First, you got to meet the definition of being chronically homeless. Okay, so our commitment to Salt Lake City when we built the Other Side Village was this was intended for those who have experienced chronic homelessness. You know, those people you see day in and day out on the street. How do we help those individuals? So that meeting that definition of chronic homelessness, be a resident of Utah, so be here at least for 12 months. We're not looking to attract everyone from everyone out of state to come and be a part of our program. I think every city needs something like the Other Side Village. And so there's that. And then substance use or mental health diagnosis would be something. You're an adult, 18 years of age or older. We don't accept anyone with an arson history or sex offenders.
Okay.
So that's the qualifying criteria.
And while you're there, these residents are paying rent from at least jobs that you guys provide for them. Is that correct?
Yeah, some get government benefits and have income through that. The rents vary based on their ability, you know, what their income is. Our average individual, we call them neighbors that live in the prep school, and then when they graduate to the village, they become a villager. The average income is $310 that they earn. And so we do provide opportunities for vocational training. It's like an internship, an apprenticeship. So you're learning skills that it's part of our treatment. It's part of the program.
So like the Other Side Academy.
Correct.
They're going to be learning the whole time they're there. And
Correct.
And progressing in a skill set. And
yeah, our programs are free. There's no cost to be a part of our program. You're not required to be there, so our doors are open. You could leave anytime you want. And because of that, you know, we're going to provide every opportunity available that we possibly can to give you purpose and show you what you're capable of doing, and ultimately become the best version of yourself with your peers right beside you, helping you, and being very open and honest with you.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I'm doing something that's you don't agree with, you don't like, you're going to call me out on it, and vice versa.
Yeah. And there's something that oh shoot, I lost the questions. There's something that I've learned about your model that goes back to when I first started doing homeless coverage. And this was the thought from Gavin Newsom when permanent supportive housing, that whole model began. Give a person dignity through housing. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I don't think a person gains dignity through a home. I think they gain dignity by working for their home, by having a paycheck that they can then use toward paying their rent and paying their bills. Do you agree with that? Do you
Housing's one component of, you know, when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and everything else. So in order to help someone achieve whole person change, you need safe housing. So housing's part of that in a dignified way. But ultimately, you can't put the roof on a house before you have a strong foundation. You've got to have this strong foundation. That foundation is based on that individual's ability to maintain housing along the way. So in permanent supportive housing, a lot of people lose it because they're not following the rules, right? Or I don't like the behavior from my neighbor, or so-and-so is using, so I'm going to move out. You can't control who's moving into your neighborhood. In our community, you do have a say. Every one of our residents has a say. They have a vote. They have a voice. Really? So when people are considered to be accepted into our community, each person can weigh in and vote on whether or not they feel that person would be a good fit or not.
Yeah, and along those lines, Skadent, probably his last name, says, I got a new construction project not far from the Other Side Village, 35 condos. However, how do we justify giving people free handouts? He asks.
We're not giving free handouts, so we're charging rent. Individuals that live in the Other Side Village are required to sign a lease. They're required to follow the rules. They're required to participate in, I'm not going to call it programming, but to participate in the community. And so it's not a handout. We're not giving anyone
that's what's great
home.
about it. It's unlike the even the traditional permanent supportive housing model, if all you have is your Social Security disability check, 30% of that check has to go toward your housing, and that's how they fund it. So yours is far less of a handout because you have a work requirement to the extent that somebody is able to work, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think that's
they don't
great.
have to work in one of our social enterprises. We give them that opportunity because many of those would not be able to qualify for regular traditional employment. Some won't even pass a background check.
Yeah.
Some have no work experience at all. And so for us, we're going to give them that training, that vocational training and work experience under the guidance of our staff and our peers. And we do hire some folks, for example, the Other Side Donuts. We've got a team that wakes up early in the morning and bakes and makes and designs and creates donuts for our shop. Some of those individuals are not part of the community, so we hire from outside. But we expect them to follow the same principles and same philosophy and same beliefs that anyone in our community does.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at it, it's like housing for people who have been homeless, who really need that community support much, much more than a traditional person, because every homeless person I've talked to is there because they've broken the ties with their family bonds.
Sure.
Like they burned all the bridges. Mom and dad have thrown up their arms and said, "Hey, I cannot handle this anymore. I've sent you to rehab 3 or 4 times. You've stolen from me, or they've stolen from everybody they know, and now they're on the streets." And so it's like they've got to create new bridges and build these relationships back up. And I think you guys are enabling them to do that.
Yeah, the number one reason for homelessness, from my experience and what I've seen, is the catastrophic loss of family. They've manipulated, they've burned bridges, they've walked away from things, they've got hooked on drugs or whatever addiction or whatever is in that roundabout with homelessness in the middle. There's so many layers and pathways to homelessness, but ultimately it's that catastrophic loss of family, and that's what you hear when you talk to our folks in our community. They'll say, "This is really my family. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have people who are aligned with my same beliefs and principles and where I want to go and the life I want to live. I don't want to be in an encampment anymore, worrying about where I'm going to get my next meal, or they're going to take all my stuff and I'm going to have to find a sleeping bag and tent and everything else again." I need some security in my life. I'm tired of living that lifestyle. And when you get to that point and you find that, and for many, like, this is too good to be true, and then they're in it, it takes time to really stabilize and get your mind in a way that you can start thinking about not just survival but thriving. Yeah.
Somebody named Horse Sensors asks, how did you as a CEO get funding for this?
Yeah, our funding comes from we don't get my salary doesn't come from any government
what's
funding, so it's the proceeds that we raise from our own social enterprise businesses that pay our salaries and pay for our operational costs.
Yeah, so just a brief rundown. The Other Side Academy it started with the Other Side Movers, then the Other Side Boutique and Thrift Store, then the Other Side Construction Company. These are all social enterprises where people learn vocational skills and they work at these jobs to get their room and board. And the amazing model about the Other Side Academy is these are people who would otherwise be spending 10, 20, 30 years in prison.
Oh yeah.
Who I guess wrote a letter to Dave, to the leadership, to get out of their prison sentence by coming here to this academy. And the amazing thing is there's no security or ankle bracelets or anything to keep the people there. It's just the community that reinforces this behavioral change.
That's right. I mean, there's a couple ways to get into the academy, which is different than the village, right? Yeah. We serve, we're under the same nonprofit umbrella, the Other Side Academy, the Other Side Village, not to confuse the two. The academy helps the population with incarcerated with some substance use and maybe homelessness. The village focuses on those who have chronic homelessness with a mental health diagnosis. So they have to be able to manage their own medications, things like that. In the academy students, the average student has been arrested 26 times. And so to be able to be accepted, you can walk in off the street. There's a bench there. You can sit on the bench and wait for your interview and then be accepted or not, if you're ready or not. And staff feels you're ready. You gotta show that you're ready to make a change. You could write a letter from prison, and our staff, the other side academy staff, will review that and determine if we're going to go interview in prison. And then you've got to have a judge sign off on that. And in lieu of your sentence, you would then go to the other side academy. You miss that, you know what the alternative is, right? You're probably going to be back in prison.
Yeah, and it's just an incredible successful model.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just blows my mind how many we've had them on this show. Just so well-spoken, dignified, honorable, great men and women you're churning out through the academy, and now folks like Brian are living in the village and part of these social enterprises. So just for the viewers watching, that's the background that's been going on for the last 10 years, and the village is now just something brand new.
Yeah, right in its infancy. I mean, literally, the other side prep school, as far as interim supportive housing, has been up for just about a year and a half. May of 2023 is when we moved to a 24/7 residential model. And then those individuals who just moved in this week to the other side village, some of those have been waiting very patiently. They've graduated and they're just waiting for their house to be built. And so now they're there.
Yeah, and now I want to show the rest of this clip of Jennifer Davis, who I also interviewed yesterday. And again, apologize, it doesn't look like folks will be able to hear it, but my question for her was, what did you have to go through to get here? And what she essentially is saying is that she went through the prep school. She had to be clean and sober before she came to the prep school, but then she got the job with the Other Side Donuts, which is the social enterprise that feeds into the village. It's only a block or two away. Why don't you talk about the Other Side Donuts and explain to viewers what that social enterprise is?
Sure. So when we look at creating social enterprises that can generate revenue for our operations, the academy students, different modality and different abilities and disabilities from our folks who are in the Other Side Village. So someone like Jennifer was hit by a car. She had a traumatic brain injury, right? Probably couldn't work in a moving company environment. Probably not the best fit for Jennifer, right? So we have to create these different social enterprises that work with their abilities. And so with the Other Side Donuts, folks, there's customer service, there's ordering, there's retail, there's wholesale, there's lots of things that go into a donut shop that you may not know, right? So now Jennifer, who manages a lot of the day-to-day operations of that, and she has experience. She's worked in banking, but yeah, she had an event in her life that caused her down a different road, and that led her to homelessness for a long period of time.
And you look at her in that interview yesterday, I could never imagine her being homeless. Like, well-spoken, cute, like acts like she's really takes her job seriously, super happy to be there.
Yep.
And she's one of these people you're like, seriously?
That's all of them. That's,
yeah.
when you look
the same. I mean,
when you look at before and afters, you wouldn't even be able to really tell they're the same person. But you have to give them purpose. You have to give people an opportunity to thrive in an environment that they feel a part of, right? It's bigger than themselves. They're there to pay it forward too. They're there to help their neighbors, their brothers and sisters that are going through the same thing. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. It's not, Jennifer's transformation was not overnight. It took a long time, a lot of heart-to-hearts, a lot of coaches helping her along the way. and now she's in her own house and paying rent and has an income and has a job and has responsibility, has friends, has neighbors who look up to her, and now she's a mentor to some of the other new folks coming in.
Yeah, that's really cool. Question from Drew. How do we get involved in volunteering?
Yeah, so theothersidevillage.com, we've got a volunteer link on our site. Just this week alone, I think I've responded to probably 50 or more emails of people that want to volunteer. Met with 2 this morning, actually. And so we'll look at, what are you interested in doing? We have volunteers that help teach yoga classes. We have cooking classes. We have art classes. We have a physical, a guy that comes in and teaches folks how to lose weight. So lots of opportunities to volunteer. So visit our website, reach out, and we'll connect.
Awesome. If you got time, I want to delve into the affordable housing crisis a little bit, because we just had a realtor on the program. We were talking about what can the politicians do to solve this problem, and we had Sim Gill on and saying that the criminal justice system very often serves as the last resort for public policy deficiencies. And we have a serious public policy deficiency in providing affordable housing. You guys are kind of providing a template or a model that might work, but it's currently for chronically homeless people. These people who are teetering on the brink of being able to afford their apartment in Salt Lake City or anywhere along the Wasatch Front, and they're working this job and housing so affordable, the cost of living so high. Do you think this could serve as a model for what our political leaders could just grab and take a hold of and copy it and put it along the Wasatch Front in more places?
Absolutely. I think the model, the word tiny home, I'm not in love with that. I'm not in love with that term. These are cottages. These are bigger than most. These are 350 to 400 square feet, full kitchen, full bath, plenty of room, dining area, living room. We've had senior couples walk through. We had one of them. One of the homes was in the Parade of Homes, and the 2 couple days I was there, I had people walking through, and a lot of senior couples. We should downsize, honey. We should really consider getting one of these, or maybe we should put one in the backyard as like an ADU that we could rent out and offset our income, and that's an opportunity when you look at the costs of permanent supportive housing. I mean, just to compare some of the more recent projects that have come up here in Salt Lake County, per door, you're looking at about $265,000 to $350,000 just to build an affordable housing.
Not including the lot?
Not including the land.
Wow.
Not including the land. That's just building costs. So for us, we're partnering with high schools and vocational schools and the Salt Lake Prison and the Gunnison Prison. They've built homes for our village.
That's cool.
And so where we can buy materials, and material costs are expensive and have gone up too, but those costs of building one of our homes is anywhere from 100 when you add the land and the transportation and installation costs and everything else, you're in that kind of 125 to 150 range. Our average home is about 80,000 unfurnished.
Okay.
And so for a starter home, for me, my first home I bought many years ago in Sugar House, and I paid like $128, I think, for it. Mm-hmm. That same house today is probably appraised value is probably $750.
Yeah.
Easily.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So no way could I afford the first home I ever bought.
Yeah.
So
and it's sort of a new paradigm, because I was in the same boat as you. Like, I was 19, I bought my first home for, I think it was $120 in Mill Creek, and filled it full of roommates, qualified by having a $9 an hour job.
Nice.
It's just like, my dad's like, no, fill out the paperwork, you'll qualify, and I did.
Sure
it
enough.
was like before, it was like 2000. No, that was freaking 1996.
Wow.
But but this new paradigm is like, I think people have to embrace, our political leaders have to eliminate the red tape around density, whatever that red tape is, just get rid of it, and just take these plots of land, there's plenty of them, and somehow just say, all right, we're plopping 400 square foot homes here.
Yeah.
Is it really that hard? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I've fought this battle for many years in different jobs that I've been in terms of dealing with ordinances and, well, we can't do this because of that, or density.
And it took you guys 4 years since
just to get it. Yeah, we had a lot of environmental remediation that we had to do.
Mostly the dirt, I guess.
A lot of dirt, a lot of water we had to move. All the other things that come into just to build. And I was talking with a developer recently, a very well-known developer, and builds a lot of homes. And he said, before we even break ground on that, we're in at about $180,000 before we even do anything.
Any home that they
even want to build. That's just not even the land cost. That's just all the other costs that you have to pay the cities and everything else. And so it takes time. I mean, you look at the shortage of affordable housing, but cities can definitely do more to try to look at I see a lot of empty parking spaces around town.
Yeah.
That could be turned into some decent housing. I grew up in Salt Lake, right? So for me, I see a lot of these apartments just going up, and the quality isn't great. But the days of being able to, I feel for anyone that's trying to buy a home right now, interest rates are high, demand is low, costs are high. So unless you have cash, cash is king. Any home is going to get multiple offers right now, so it's tough. I mean, for a first-time home buyer, the small home, kind of tiny home concept is definitely something that cities ought to look at, especially when you look at like Summit County and places you're trying to bring in people for jobs, for skiing or recreation or things like that. Most people have a hard time being able to work or live where they work.
Yeah, and we had Steve Waldrop on this program. I think he's the right man for the job. Seemed highly qualified, very knowledgeable.
Steve knows what he's talking about. He's been on all sides of that front, and he's worked up and down the Wasatch Front. And
he blames. I mean, it's like you gotta place blame where blame is due, just like you gotta place credit where credit's due, and it's not just the regulations and red tape. It's also financing. There's no bank that wants to finance a tiny home. Right. There's no bank that wants to finance a lot for a tiny home. It just doesn't exist. It's like you have to absolutely change everything from top to bottom to get something like this passed for, regular consumers. And, in the meantime, it seems like a no-brainer that they would pass this for the seniors who are about to be priced out of the housing market. You see more and more seniors who are homeless these days.
Yeah.
And they'll just say, my landlord decided to raise my rent. I couldn't afford it. And it's, we're at a serious crisis with this problem. And
there's a when you look at homeless rates too, there's a direct correlation with housing and homelessness. When you look at the 23 numbers that just came out from a national in both Utah, we're seeing an uptick in all of that.
Yeah.
So, day in and day out, we get people calling and like, I'm going to lose my house. I don't know what to do. I'm desperate. I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be on the street. Or my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, they're in a facility. They're in a nursing facility. They're raising it. And so, yeah, there's not a lot of options. And so I know my friends that run the resource centers and shelters, and they're always at capacity.
Yeah.
Right.
And I believe all of the overflow shelters are full now.
So some of that situational homelessness, some of that's chronic homelessness. There's a lot of different facets, but they can't be the catch-all, right? There's got to be other outlets that help with that flow. Otherwise, you just continue to. There's not enough services to go around, and then what? Mm-hmm. You're in chaos mode.
Yeah, and we see the they call them pods, pop-up pods that are under the freeway.
Yeah, the micro shelters.
And I think that's a great solution.
Yeah,
like just more sites like that. People.
That's the thing. I mean, when I worked in the homeless resource centers, my office was in the Gail Miller Resource Center, and I'd see people get dropped off. Literally, I'd see vans pull up from different care facilities, and just there they are with all their stuff, and out they go. And that was always just a terrible sight to see. And unfortunately, that happens a lot.
Yeah, the saddest thing I witnessed was I was in an abatement, and there's an elderly couple that are living out of their RV, and the wife had some really debilitating, I believe it was something like, what's the bacteria, that staph infection.
Yeah.
And they had sell everything to pay the medical bills, and they're living out of this RV, and they're getting abated by the cops. The cops are telling them, you have to go. You cannot stay
can't park here.
And all the guy could say was, I'm actually really, really thankful that the city let us stay here for 2.5 weeks. But I was like, where are you going to go now? And he's like, I have no idea. And that we should never allow people who are residents of this state to have to deal with that kind of situation. That's at one point where I believe you've been paying your taxes all your life. You're a resident here of the United States and Utah. We should be able to find a decent place for you to stay.
Yeah. Sadly, there's a lot of folks living in RVs, and those that are on the street that might be service resistant. They may have gone to a resource center or shelter and just maybe didn't have the best experience, and so they choose to be on the street. That's a whole different story.
Yeah,
right.
And there's quite a few of those.
There are.
They're just choosing to camp by the river, and
sadly, there's people that prey on those people too.
Mm-hmm.
You got traffickers and drug dealers and everything else that prey on those individuals, and I know many of those folks.
So when you were at Gail Miller, you were the director?
So I was the director of Shelter the Homeless, and they had administrative offices in the Gail Miller at the time, where my office was. So, yeah.
Do you see anything immediate that the shelters could be doing to help those people get into jobs, get into work? It seems like everybody there is just in survival mode. It's hard
the challenge is just funding, and it costs a lot to run those facilities and staff those facilities. And so, if you're a case manager or therapist or frontline staff, you have a really hard job, mm-hmm. and burnout is real, and most don't get paid enough to stay and work along, but many do. But yeah, I mean, there's opportunities to, but again, it takes time and funding. And so if you're just trying to make sure people aren't, they're following the rules and going where they go and not creating chaos for everyone else, then it's a challenge.
Yeah. Last question, unless you have anything else, anybody watching, Drew says, this sounds in line with the work that Michael Schellenberger has written about in his book San Francisco. Are you familiar with his work?
Yeah, I read the book. So when you look at the evolution of how the Other Side Academy came to be, it's based on a model called Delancey Street in San Francisco. Most of the senior level staff that run the Other Side Academy, both in our Salt Lake campus and our Denver campus, are graduates of Delancey Street. So there are some similar philosophical principles that we follow, but some are different too. That we've taken what we thought could be done differently and implemented that. And so, when you look at how the academy and how the village and how we operate, the academy is what's called a classic therapeutic community. The Other Side Village is a democratic therapeutic community. So there are some nuances and difference between the two, and that's our individuals that are in there. They're learning that culture. So we're not just going to hand them the keys to their home in the village and say, okay, good luck. We're going to help them so that they can maintain that housing and keep it.
So what's the difference between classic and democratic?
The classic is kind of more of authoritarian, and the democratic is anyone that's in therapy or in that treatment modality, they have a say in that. So they help with the policies. They help create procedures. We call it co-producing. So they co-produce anything that we're putting out there, whether it be rules, regulations, policies, things
That's
like that.
cool. And so they take more ownership in the community that way.
Yeah,
So
it takes a little bit longer in terms of operational and decision making and things like that. But ultimately, we want their lived experience to be able to say, you know what, that didn't work for me when I was here or there. And that's really, truly what the secret sauce of what we've done is to bring all of that experience to operationally so that people feel like their needs are being met.
Yeah. And I learned more about Joseph Granny. I actually didn't know his complete background until I read and listened to Crucial Conversations. And that book, that audio book, it just addresses the need to get down to the heart of problems and communicate those problems openly and honestly and truthfully. And is that a big part of the culture that makes it succeed?
It's definitely an integral part in what we do in our day-to-day conversations with everything. So, my, I guess, recommendation would be if you're listening and you're a business owner or you're a father or mother and you're trying to figure out how to parent your kids, Crucial Conversations is a great book to read. Just to help you in your everyday life and helping you run your business and being able to communicate with your employees.
So he brought that model from San Francisco to Salt Lake, and then
actually, part of his research when he was writing it, it took him and led him to Delancey Street, which is what caused him to found and start the Other Side Academy here in Salt Lake.
So he was researching Delancey Street, and he thought after he wrote the book it was successful.
We need something like that here, and he had some family members that were dealing with some stuff, and he said we need this here, and he was able to, I wouldn't say coerce, but Dave and some of the senior leaders that left San Francisco and came here to start the Other Side Academy.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Preston. Oh, do we have one more question? Okay, we'll do one more if you got time. Alrighty. We've got Cindy Stapleton probably Cindy Stapleton. What are some ways to get the system to change and get the money to fund more of this? Who do we write a letter to? That's a good question.
Well, our whole ultimate goal is to be self-sustaining. We're in fundraising mode for the village. So we've obviously phase one, we've got 3 phases of construction that we're working towards. Ultimately, our goal is to have over 400 homes there. Those homes cost money, so we're actively engaged in raising money, both publicly and privately from donors. We've got some just amazing, gracious donors who believe in our cause, believe in our mission and our approach. And so, for us, if we can be self-reliant, self-sustaining, that's our ultimate goal as an organization. Any nonprofit, fundraising's challenge.
Yeah.
And
how do people donate?
So they can go on our website. We do have a donate. They can go to theothersidevillage.com and donate there. Or if you're interested in learning more, we're happy to, schedule a tour of the village and have you see it firsthand.
Cool. Well, great. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Preston.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
All right. And just so our viewers are aware, this is brought to you by Utah Stories Magazine. And Other Side Academy is one of our sponsors of this content. We've been, delving into the homeless issues for 4 years now and just asking the questions that I think are a little more in-depth than a lot of the local media are asking. How and why is our homeless problem growing worse despite increasing amounts of spending every single year? And those are the questions we attempt to ask on this podcast and bringing on experts like Preston, like Steve Waldrop. And if you want to support our content, go out to Utah Stories, become a member, and we will send you our brand new Faces of Utah magazine. This magazine is a entrepreneur success guide in Utah. It's a lot of it showcases a lot of leadership and entrepreneur success stories. We tell the story of how Kyle Whittingham has made the Utah Utes so successful by not getting top-tier athletes, by getting more first and second-tier athletes and transforming them into top-tier athletes. It's a very cool story, and his program has obviously been an enormous success. So we delve into that with a feature story, and then just a lot of really cool entrepreneurs in here. The face of Utah real estate, how they became successful in interior design, Adib's Rugs, Quality Billiards. So you can get your hands on this if you want to become a member of Utah Stories. It's $5 a month, and you can help support more content like this. So thank you, everyone who was live today with us on Instagram. Thank you so much for the questions. If you have more questions and you're watching this on YouTube, leave your questions, comments below. We love getting those, and we'll address those later on. All right, we'll see you next time.